Hello, everyone. This is Kevin McArdle. Thank you for joining me, and welcome to this Executive Insights webinar on solving your number one problem, people. And obviously, this is a very hot topic because our attendance for this executive briefing and Executive Insights webinar is literally 30% higher than our earlier webinars. And so interesting that this is an important topic. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to a valuable program with you. It's important for you to know that this program really has been specifically designed to give you some high-level strategies, some best practices, and some very practical tools to help you get better results from your business, better results from your people, and better results from your time. And today's Executive Insights webinar will be recorded and we'll make it available to you following the program. And I do want you to know that in the time we have together, I'm going to give you lots of very content-rich material. And at the end of the session, I'll let you know how you can have greater access to more information about the topic and drill down on the topic as well. And we will make the recording of today's webinar available to you following this program as well. Those of you that have sat in on my earlier Executive Insights webinar, we typically hold these about once a month, and you know that I have really three goals for these programs. The first is to expand your thinking, and that's really helping to look at your business in a new and different way. And second, my second goal for these Executive Insights webinars is really to help you build momentum, and that's to give you some real and some simple and some very practical tools to help you get more done, gain more traction, and run a better business. And you're going to see as we get into this, I'm going to give you some very practical, actionable tools that you can go back and begin applying in your business immediately. And so my third goal in these Executive Insights webinar is always to guide you through the complexities of strategic execution. Everything that we have been doing in these Executive Insights webinars has been around executing your strategy and strengthening your strategic execution. So I want to help you to get better results from your business, better results from your people, and better results from your time and the time that you're investing in your business. So today's program is really focusing on what I believe is the number one problem in a lot of businesses, and that's proven by the informal and formal discussions that we have with our prospects and customers. This issue of people and people problems and wrestling with and being distracted by these people problems tends to be a very big issue. And so today in this session, first of all, you come away from this session, we're going to apply a practical understanding of the two essential ingredients of any great team, and that is getting the right people in the right seats. And a lot has been written about this, and so we're going to give you some specific tools and some techniques to really evaluate and get the right people and get those right people in the right seats in your organization. The other thing is you're going to save your business time and money by eliminating your people problems once and for all. And I'm going to show you a tool that we call GWC, and we're going to use the GWC test to hire the team who's going to thrive within your organization and help you to get better results and achieve your vision. And through this approach, we're going to really fire up your team's inner drive by matching them with the positions that complement their greatest skills and passion, and really get them aligned and clearly aligned with where your organization is going, how it's going to get there, and probably most importantly, their role in helping you to accomplish that. You're going to be able to delegate with confidence by increasing the accountability throughout your organizational structure and empowering your team to execute your company's strategies more consistently in a stronger fashion, is really aligning those resources as well. And finally, you're going to be able to turn your people into a source of competitive advantage for your business by pinpointing both the integrator and the visionary who's going to move your organization forward. So we're going to be talking about not only the makeup of your organization, but also the makeup and how you organize your executive team and your entire organization as well. And ultimately, you're going to spend less time on your people problems and more time realizing your company's vision at the highest level. So with that, I did want to mention that our Director of Marketing, Megan O'Leary, is helping us to organize today's program, and she will be fielding your questions and comments. So I encourage you to just simply submit questions or comments or concerns that you have. I'll do my best to field those and respond to those as quickly as I can. And hopefully by the end of the program and throughout the program, as I receive your questions and comments, I'll be sure to comment on those and react to those and address those sometime in the time that we have together. So thank you again. Let's get underway here. It is my belief that every great system is made up of a core group of basic components, and the same applies to your business as well. Your business is really made up of a set of fundamental components that work together to build and apply and function your business as a system. And so this approach of looking at your business from a systemic standpoint is important to set the context for what we're going to be talking about today. And when we think of a business and the foundational components of a business, we use a tool called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and or EOS. And EOS really identifies the 6 components of your business. And so if you look at, and we'll put your business in the center of this model or in the center of this framework, the Entrepreneurial Operating System is really a unique system of business management, and it's a mechanism for strategic execution. And so to put our conversation today in context, I want to show you the overall model because people is one of the 6 components. And so when we think about your business and the components that make up your business, the first thing we talk about is the vision for your business. And when we're working with clients and applying the Entrepreneurial Operating System, in the vision component, we simply work to answer 8 fundamental questions for your business. And those questions are along the lines of, what are your core values? What's your core focus? What's your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy for your business? What's your 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your quarterly goals? And we like to call those rocks. And then ultimately, what are the key issues that are preventing you from moving forward and the challenges that are preventing you from moving forward? And then secondly, under the vision component, we want to make sure that's shared and understood by the entire organization. So under vision, we ask you these 8 questions, then we give you some tools for addressing those 8 questions and sharing them with your entire organization. The second component of EOS, or more importantly, the second component of really the system that's running your business, is this issue that we're going to be talking about today, or this component that we're going to be talking about today. And people is really around getting the right people in the right seats. And so in our discussions today, I'm going to give you some simple tools and some practical approaches for, first of all, finding and identifying the right people. And then once you have those right people, getting the right people into the right seats within your organization. The third component in your entrepreneurial operating system, or the system that's running your business, is going to be the data that you use. And with this approach, we always recommend, and we work with executive teams like yours, to establish a scorecard. And this is simply a set of leading and lagging measures that you could be on a Caribbean island someplace, and you could look at these leading and lagging measures anywhere from 5 to 12 to 15 leading and lagging measures on this scorecard to get a sense of what's happening in your business. And you would be able to clearly understand and recognize what's happening in your business by simply looking at that scorecard. And the second piece of the data component is what we like to call measurables. And that is just setting up and assuring that everybody in your organization has at least one measurable that they're accountable for. And so these first 3 components help you to build the foundation for a successful, healthy, functioning, cohesive organization. The fourth component within your organization and running your organization in the system that's made up of running your business is how you manage and address and resolve your issues in your organization. And so we use a couple of tools. One is an issues list, where we simply capture what the key issues and challenges are within your organization, within your department, within your functional areas. And then we have a tool that we call IDS that helps you to identify and discuss and solve and resolve those issues and prioritize those issues and get those issues resolved and put to bed and resolved once and for all. The fifth component in your business is the processes that make up your business. And every organization has processes. And so in the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, we work to document those processes. And what we really look at is what are the key processes that make up the functions of your organization, and we document the 20% of the steps that make up 80% of the process. And secondly, under process, we just make sure that those processes are followed by all, and everyone that is involved in those processes is doing the same thing in the same way. And the fifth component that we just want to address here very briefly is what we call traction. And this is really moving your organization into what we call a 90-day world. Because what we have found is organizations that tend to focus on yearly types of goals often get overwhelmed and lose their way. And so we move you into a cadence of accountability, into a 90-day world by establishing these 90-day goals and objectives that we like to call rocks. And then we show you how to have high-level, what we call level 10 meetings that are highly effective, highly productive, meetings that move your objectives forward, address your issues, and get those resolved and put to bed once for all, and get everybody much more disciplined and accountable and just executing really well. And so I wanted to just mention these 6 components that make up the entrepreneurial operating system, because these are common to every business. And it's really a unique system of business management. And today we are going to focus on the people component. And so we're going to pick out just the people component of the entrepreneurial operating system. And in subsequent executive insight webinars, by the way, we are going to cover these other 5 elements. And so that may be interesting, of interest to you. And by the way, in last month's executive insight webinar, we covered the entire system. And you can find that on our website if you'd like to drill down in the system more. So let's take a look at the people component. That's why we're here today. And so how do you resolve this #1 issue that we call people, and this struggle that we often have with the people in our organization? And it's not always a bad thing, by the way. I don't mean to be couching this or positioning this in a negative way. I mean, successful leaders obviously surround themselves with great people. You can't build a great organization unless you have great people in that organization. And you know, you've probably heard the old joke in which somebody asks the CEO, you know, how many people work in your company? And she'll respond, well, about half of them. And I've always thought that was kind of an ironic joke, but you know, it isn't so funny when you begin to realize how much time, energy, and resources are wasted within organizations every day. And it is critical that we recognize that great companies are built with great people, and successful leaders always surround themselves with great people, and you simply cannot build a great company without great people. And so today we're going to be talking about how do we build a great organization, a great team of people that are just aligned and executing really well and are working as a healthy, cohesive, functional team. And this approach that we're going to take, it really cuts through the buzzwords of A players and 100%ers and superstars to provide a practical understanding of the 2 essential ingredients of any great team. And that is having the right people in the right seats. So when I think of your role, our role as an executive team, whether you're a business owner, a CEO, or a member of your executive team, I believe that we have 2 critical jobs within our organization. And the first is to get the right people in the right seats. And again, today's program is really going to be focusing on how do we build some objective tools that we can evaluate and make sure that we've got the right people, and how do we assure that we have them in the right place, in the right seats, leveraging their unique abilities, and just working, again, as a healthy, cohesive, functional team. Our second most important job as an executive team is really getting the wrong people out as quickly as possible. You know, it's the old adage, hire slow and fire quickly. And believe me, I am not, and you will hear as we go through this program, I am not a big advocate of firing people and churning people. I am a big advocate of giving the people the tools that they need, the evaluations that they need, and the guidance that they need to be successful. And so I am not about #2. I'm really about, and this program is really about #1, getting the right people in the right seats. And so let me show you a couple of tools that we use to do this. And I'm actually going to introduce you to 3 tools that we use for getting the right people in the right seats. And we're going to be talking about a people analyzer, we're going to be talking about an accountability chart, and then we're going to be talking about GWC. So when you think about getting the right people in your organization, I'd like to ask you something. be truly honest with yourself and ask yourself, are all of your people the right ones for their job? Are they the right people in the right seats? If you look across your organization, do you have the right people in the right seats doing the right things? And the reality is that some of your people may be hurting your cause, not because they're bad people, but you might have the right people in the wrong seats. And in some cases, you might have the wrong people in the right seats, and obviously in some cases, you might have the wrong people in the wrong seats as well. And so to answer that question, using an objective criteria, we use a tool called the People Analyzer. So the People Analyzer is a relatively straightforward tool that's used to analyze your people to help you to identify the right people by teaching you how to determine who shares and demonstrates your core values. And so the People Analyzer begins with your core values and tests for alignment of your core values in the thinking, behaviors, decision, and actions of your team. And so the People Analyzer really helps you to simplify how you hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize people. So with the People Analyzer, we simply start out by identifying and carrying through your 3 to 5 core values. And so in this sample that we're using for our discussions today, I'm going to use humbly competent as a value. And maybe one of your values is grow or die. Maybe one of your values is we're going to help first and take credit second. One of your values might be integrity and simply doing the right thing. And then finally, one of your core values might be doing what you say you're going to do. Now again, these are sample core values. And you might recall that when we talked about the EOS system, under the vision component, one of the pieces was identifying your core values. And so most organizations have done a pretty good job at identifying their core values, but not a very good job at communicating those values to their organization and making sure that they're shared by all. So in the case of our People Analyzer that we're making up, again, these are fictitious values and core values. But in your organization, you're going to have 3 to 5 to 7 core values that make up how you operate as an organization. Your thinking, your behaviors, decisions, and actions are aligned with those values. So now that we've got the values clearly articulated across the top of the People Analyzer, we're going to put your team members on the left-hand side. So let's assume that you're the Director of Marketing and you've got 3 team members. You've got Sally Jones, John Smith, and George Wilson are on your team. They're on your marketing team, and you are the Vice President of Marketing, for instance, within your organization. And so the People Analyzer simply asks the question, if we were to look at Sally Jones, to what degree does Sally exhibit and practice and demonstrate your core values? In other words, how closely is Sally aligned with your core values in her thinking, her behaviors, her decisions, and her actions? And so we would go through and say, okay, Sally Jones, relative to humbly confident, and we're going to use a plus, a minus, or a plus minus, and I'll show you all 3 here. And so with Sally Jones, we're simply going to evaluate to the degree that we can view Sally Jones, to what degree is she actively and proactively demonstrating the value of humbly confident. And in this case, the plus represents that she does this on a consistent basis. So in her decision-making, her thinking, her actions, her behaviors throughout the organization, she demonstrates in an outwardly and observable way alignment with our core value of humbly confident. She also demonstrates that alignment to our grow or die value, our help first value, our do the right things value, and do what you say value. So in terms of Sally Jones, we can draw the conclusion that she actively and proactively demonstrates and aligns with our core values, your core values in your organization in terms of how she thinks, acts, and behaves within the organization. So this is simply an evaluation of this objective criteria is to what degree does Sally exhibit these core beliefs and behaviors. So now if we look at John, our evaluation is, you know what? It looks like John really doesn't demonstrate our core values. He doesn't demonstrate the core value of being humbly confident. He really doesn't align his decision-making and actions around our focus on growing or dying in the organization. He's really pretty much self-centered and really doesn't demonstrate very well to any degree, helping first, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like John Smith really isn't aligned with and practicing or demonstrating our values. And so now down here we've got George. And again, I'm just using these as examples. So George is in our marketing department, and it looks like, and based on our evaluation, the degree to which George is really demonstrating our core values is about 50-50. Sometimes he demonstrates them, and other times he doesn't. So now we've got this situation as well. What do we do with Sally? What do we do with John? And what do we do with George? And so what we recommend is, now that you've got your core values identified and you've got your team members on the left side, the left column of this, and you've done this evaluation, we recommend that you set a bar for your organization. And the bar that we recommend, and I'm not suggesting that this is specific to these values, is, but we recommend that at minimum, your minimum bar is that Sally, John, or George, in order to be identified as the right person in our organization, has to demonstrate a minimum of 3 of the core values on a consistent basis, and the other 2 on a 50-50 or at least a mixed basis. And so we recommend that at minimum, your bar is 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses. So now we've got an objective criteria, how well and to what degree these individuals demonstrate our thinking, behaviors, and actions in aligned with the core values. And now we have a criteria that we can use to evaluate those. So clearly in this case, if I am the Vice President of Marketing at your company, I can evaluate Sally Jones against how well and to what degree she aligns with and practices our core values. And then I can look at John Smith and I can look at George Wilson, and because our bar has been set with 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses, or 2 somewhat plus minuses, I now can say Sally is above the bar, John clearly is below the bar, and George Wilson is below the bar. And some of you might ask, well, why is George below the bar? And that is because he doesn't consistently demonstrate in his thinking, behaviors, and actions complete alignment with our value and our core values in our organization. And so in this case, we've got some corrective action that we need to take with John and George, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes when we talk about the 3 strike rules and coaching them. But my point here is the People Analyzer gives you an objective criteria against your core values of the organization and helps you measure and determine to what degree are these individuals practicing and demonstrating your core values in the way they think, the way they behave, the way they make decisions, and the way they act internally and with your external customers as well. Looks like we have a question from Lisa. Lisa asked, well, what if your core values haven't been clearly defined? Well, clearly, in order to do this exercise and establish a meaningful People Analyzer, we must first have clearly identified the core values of our organization. And that's why you saw earlier in the EOS model, we talked about vision first, and that's the piece where we would first identify what your core values are. So clearly, if you haven't articulated and communicated your core values, that's the first thing that needs to happen, because if Sally, John, and George aren't clear on what our core values are, you can't expect them to demonstrate those core values until they truly understand and know what those core values are. And those of you that have worked with me or know me from before, you know that I came out of Medtronic. Medtronic is a Fortune 500 company here in the Twin Cities. Was founded by Earl Bakken, and I worked at Medtronic in the early 80s. And I want to mention that because Earl Bakken was the founder, and my employee number was 7513. I don't know why I still remember that, but I think they've got over 15,000 employees now. Within the first 2 weeks when I started at Medtronic, Earl Bakken literally sat down with me over lunch, not with a group of people, but one-on-one with me over lunch, and he gave me a bronze medallion that had the Medtronic logotype on the front, and on the back of it, it had the 6 core values of Medtronic. And Earl Bakken literally spent the next 40 to 45 minutes walking me through those 6 core values, the history of each, why they were important to the business, and demonstrated and helped me understand those core values and how they should impact my thinking, my decision-making, my behaviors, and my actions throughout Medtronic. And so this wasn't some poster on the wall that I was supposed to pick up by osmosis. The founder and at that time CEO and president of the organization, Earl Bakken, literally sat down with every new hire and walked through these core values that made up Medtronic's approach to business and their overall philosophy. And so my point of this is, if we're going to use a people analyzer effectively, our core values have to be identified and communicated, understood by all, and then this helps us to determine who's practicing those core values. So I don't see any other questions related to the people analyzer. So now let's move into right seats. And so we're going to talk now, we just finished talking about right people, excuse me, and now we're going to move into right seats, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to walk you through right seats, and then we're going to come back and tie right people into the right seats. So now that we have a people analyzer in place, let's talk about defining the right seats for your organization. And the tool that we use for structuring your organization and thinking about the structure of your organization is the accountability chart. And what the accountability chart does is it prompts you to step back and look at the overall structure of your organization and asks you to ask some hard questions about how your organization is organized. And we actually pull the people out for the time being, and we step in and use an accountability chart for structuring your company the right way, while clearly defining the roles and responsibilities in the organization. Because most organizations that we work with have evolved over time, and they've evolved without design, and the structure of the organization may or may not make sense. So one of the questions you need to be asking yourself is, do we have the organization structured in the right way, and have we clearly defined the roles and responsibility in the organization? Once you've defined the right structure in place, then we can move on to getting the right people in the right seats within the right organization and the right structure. And so the tool that we use for building and identifying the right structure for your organization is an accountability chart. And if we think about a typical organization, whether you're a service organization, a manufacturing organization, across whatever industry, is going to have some major components. And so the first key component or key functional area, you will probably have a sales or sales and marketing function within your business. The second is you probably have some type of operations, whether you're doing manufacturing or service delivery, accounting, CPA firms. You're going to have some type of a sales and marketing function and an operations function, and then you're going to have some type of a finance function. So if you think about the big blocks that make up an organization, it's going to be sales and marketing, operations, and finance. Now clearly, those of you that are listening may have a number of blocks under each one of these. You may have 3 or 4 or 5, 10 people in sales and marketing. You may have 20, 25 people in operations. You may have 3 or 4 people in your finance and IT functions. But for the sake of simplicity and sake of discussion, I really want to just break it down into these 3 major functions. And the tools that we're going to apply can apply at all levels. Clearly, you can apply this in a small organization of 10 to 15 people, or in a larger organization of 100 to 150 or 200 people. So we start out, and we have these major functional areas, and then those functional areas typically will answer into or report to an integrator. And in this case, what we are doing with the accountability chart is, within the sales and marketing, operations, and finance, and the integrator function is, we want to identify not just the roles, but what are the key accountabilities inside of each of those functional areas. And so in sales and marketing, what are the key 5 to 7 accountabilities that role and that person is accountable for? In operations, what are the 3 to 5 to 7 key accountabilities that person heading up operations is going to be accountable for? And in finance, what are the 3 to 5 to 7 key accountabilities within our organization that person is going to be accountable and responsible for? And at the integrator level, what are those key responsibilities and accountabilities? And I'll show you a couple of samples here in just a few minutes. And so, interesting question. I just got a question from Dean. This is a great question, Dean. Kevin, how does an accountability chart differ from a basic org chart? And when you think about an org chart, we tend to think about how the organization is structured and what the roles are. The difference between an accountability chart, Dean, and an org chart, a traditional org chart, is a traditional org chart tends to talk about roles, where here we're talking about not only the roles but the key accountabilities. And so we end up with a single document that defines how the organization is structured, but it also defines the key accountabilities within each of those roles. And so what we have found is this helps bring clarity to not only what's the role, but what is the key accountability of each of those functions. And more importantly, not only what they are accountable for, but what they aren't accountable for. And this brings focus and clarity to the functions within your organization. So let me talk a little bit about this integrator role. In about 50% of the organizations that we work with, we find that there is a second role that we call visionary. And in about half of the organizations, we will see a visionary role. And in all organizations, we highly recommend that there is an integrator role and an integrator accountability. And let me describe the difference here. The integrator is the person that leads, manages, and is accountable for the functions that report into them. And so typically an integrator within an organization has P&L responsibility. They're the one that's responsible for developing and executing the business plan. They remove obstacles and barriers internally, manage issues and objectives. They manage special projects. And this person tends to be more of a left-brain logical person and a logically driven person. And we highly recommend that in all entrepreneurial organizations, in all organizations, you need an integrator. And because that integrator has a skill set and a core set of competencies that are ideally suited for taking all these moving parts and doing exactly what we call it, integrating it. And as I mentioned, about 50% of the time, we will see a visionary in an organization. And a visionary is, these tend to be founders of organizations, and these are the idea people. They're very creative people. They're really good at managing and finding big relationships, and culture is really important to them. They're good at research and development and problem solving and coming up with really just ingenious and inventive ways to solve customers' problems and challenges. They tend to be exhibit ADHD characteristics. They've got a lot of things going on a lot of times. They've got 20 big ideas that they're working on all the time. And these people tend to be driven more on emotion. And it's a great skill and a great talent and a great gift to be a visionary. The reason I'm bringing this up is one of the core problems that we find that is a cause to a lot of people issues within organizations is a visionary attempting to run an organization without an integrator present in that organization. So what you end up with is you'll have a visionary person, and this may be resonating with some of you because some of you in this audience may be visionaries. And the integrator is the detail person. And that kind of stuff drives a visionary crazy. They don't like to do the details. They don't like all of this, the logical pieces and managing all these moving parts. They just want to get on and move on with the big ideas and move on to the next idea. And so what happens is about 50% of the time we will find a visionary in an organization. And when a visionary exists without an integrator role, you have two things happening. First of all, the visionary is really frustrated because they get drawn into the day-to-day minutia of running an organization, and secondly, the major functional areas are often confused and frustrated because the visionary is taking them in so many different directions and so many flavors of the month that the organization can't get alignment and can't function appropriately. It becomes very dysfunctional because of that visionary, those visionary characteristics. And so what we recommend is every organization should have an integrator, but it's not necessary for every organization to have a visionary. So if you are a head of an organization or a member of an executive team that has a visionary present and does not have an integrator role, I would highly recommend that you consider establishing an integrator role within your organization, because this is the person that's going to organize the chaos. They're the person that's going to herd the cats, get their arms around all this, lead, manage, and hold the rest of the organization accountable. And I bring that up because we see it happen about 50% of the time, and oftentimes some of these people problems that we're addressing are oftentimes caused by being led by a visionary without an integrator function in your organization. So now that we've got the right structure in place, we have clear accountabilities that have been established, and we have a clear roles within the organization, and we now have our organization structured appropriately for what it is we're looking to accomplish. And again, under each of these, you're clearly going to have more individuals. I used this model for simplicity, but clearly your organization has more than 5 people. I'm assuming if you're listening to this webinar, you probably have at least 5 or 10 people. So you're going to have more blocks under your accountability chart. The key here is to identify those key roles, structure your organization appropriately for where you want to go in the next 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 months. Make sure you've got it structured appropriately. And within that structure and within each of those roles, make sure that you have clear accountabilities identified and articulated on your accountability chart. What are those 3 to 5 to 7 key accountabilities that the sales and marketing person is going to have, that the operations person is going to have, that the finance person is going to have, the integrator is going to have, and the visionary is going to have. So I gave you an example here. These could be the key accountabilities of the visionary and the integrator. Okay, so now the first tool that I showed you was the people analyzer. That helped us to make sure that we've got the right people. The second tool that I showed you is the accountability chart. And keep in mind to that earlier question, the accountability chart is not simply an org chart. It is an accountability chart that clearly identifies the structure of your organization and the key accountabilities. So now we've got these 2 tools, and we're going to couple that with the next tool that I call GWC, or that we call GWC. We're going to bring the people analyzer together and the accountability chart together to really make sure that we're now putting the right people into the right seats. So let's move on to what we like to call GWC. And so within this function, so if you go back to the earlier diagram, so let's say we're taking sales and marketing or operations or finance. So for our discussion, let's say we're in operations. And so within operations, we now put the name of the person. So this could be Sally Jones from our earlier description where we're using the people analyzer. And then under this, for Sally Jones, these are her key 5 accountabilities. There are 5 key accountabilities. And so we've got the function, the name, and the 5 key accountabilities. So now to further evaluate whether Sally Jones is a good fit for this seat, in other words, is she the right person in the right seats, we're going to evaluate her against a criteria that we call GWC. And GWC is very simply, does Sally get it? Does she understand and get the function of operations? Is it clear in her head? Can she grasp this? Is she able to get her arms around it and comprehend the importance that operations brings to the organization, how it aligns with the overall strategy and mission of the organization, and how does it create value for the customer? So we have to make sure that Sally gets it. Does she get this? Does she truly understand this role and the key accountabilities and how and why they're so important to moving the organization forward? So that's the first criteria. The second is, does she want it? Is this a desirable role for Sally? Is this a good fit for her in terms of her desire? Does it make her heart go pitter-pat? Does she get excited about this? Does it ignite a fire within her to be heading up the operations function in the organization? So these 2 criteria is, does she get it? Does she understand the importance and the role that this function plays in the organization? Does she want it? Is it a good fit for her? Is she excited about it? Is this desirable for her? Is it going to make her heart go pitter-pat? Is she excited about it? And then finally, does she have the capacity to do this? Does she have the intellectual and emotional capacity to lead, in our case of this discussion, the operations function within the organization? So we use GWC as a criteria. And again, these are some objective criteria that go beyond whether she's meeting her results or not. And so we're going to ask, does Sally get it, want it, and does she have the capacity to carry this out within her organization? So now I'm going to return you back to the people analyzer, and we're going to integrate get it, want it, and capacity, GWC, into the people analyzer. So you'll notice this is the original people analyzer that I showed you earlier. there's our 5 core values across the top: humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing, do what you say. And then we've got our people down the left: Sally Jones, John Smith, George Wilson, and here's our minimum bar. So now we're going to take the people analyzer and we're going to add to it get it, want it, and capacity to do it. And so now in our case, we were talking about Sally Jones and whether she would be a good fit or the right person in the right seat for operations. And the bar that we establish is there absolutely has to be a yes under all 3. She absolutely has to get it, she has to want it, and she has to have the capacity to do it in order to be successful. So now the bar that we have set it's aligned against our core values, our 5 core values, and it's also aligned against the role and the accountabilities within that functional area. In our case, we were talking about Sally Jones heading up operations. So now in this case, to evaluate whether Sally Jones is a good fit to head up our operations, we simply ask, does she demonstrate in her thinking, behaviors, and actions behaviors that align with our core values? Absolutely, looks like she does. To what degree is she doing that? It looks like all the time. And then we would simply ask, relative to heading up operations, how well does Sally Jones get it, want it, and has the capacity to do this? And that helps us to evaluate whether we are putting the right person in the right seat. And that makes a determination of, okay, we know we were going to have the right person in the right seat because Sally Jones demonstrates our values, she gets it, she wants it, and she has the capacity to do this. So there's no longer any gray area. The 3 absolutes for any good fit within a seat is they must get it, they must want it, and they must have the capacity to do this. So if you combine the get it, want it capacity, the GWC, with the people analyzer and the accountability chart, you've got a working tool that determines which people are the right ones to put in the right seat within your organization. And now you also have an objective criteria that you can evaluate Sally, John, George, and whoever else is in your organization against whether they're demonstrating your core values and whether they get it, want it, and have the capacity to perform that role within your organization. So again, this gives you it takes away the subjectivity, it takes away all these terms like the 100%er and the go-getter, and gives you a tool, a very simple and practical and powerful tool to help you analyze whether you've got the right people in the right seats doing the right things. And so this is a very, very powerful combination of 3 tools: GWC, the People Analyzer, and the Accountability Chart. They come through and come together to ensure that you've got the right people in the right seats doing the right things in the right way to drive your organization forward. They're aligned with your vision, they're aligned with your mission, they're aligned with your overall value construct. They get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. There's a question here from Brian, and could you restate the observable criteria? And I'm assuming what you meant, Brian, in your question was the observable criteria would be, obviously, do they demonstrate in their actions and behaviors against the core values and get it, want it, and capacity to do it. But I think what you're referring to, I was mentioning as a criteria, are they demonstrating your core values in their thinking, their behaviors, their decisions, and actions? And so that goes back to the Earl Bakken story, because that's exactly the words that he used was, Kevin, you must demonstrate in your thinking, your behaviors, your decisions, and your actions our alignment and your alignment to our overall core values. We've got another question from Chris. Chris is asking, can I use this as a way of evaluating my executive team as well as my staff? And absolutely, Chris. When we work with organizations, actually the first day that we do a focus day, that's one of the things that we do with the executive team. We go through the people analyzer, we go through the accountability chart, we fill this out for the executive team, and we ask their peers in the room to evaluate to what degree is that person demonstrating our core values. Do they get it, do they want it, and do they have the capacity to execute it? And so, Chris, absolutely. Sometimes those are difficult conversations, but that doesn't mean that they're not meaningful and relevant. And so absolutely, Chris, you can use this, and we do use this for executive teams. In fact, that's one of the very first things that we do on the morning of the focus day, which is the first day that we work with executive teams. Coming out of the chute by 9 o'clock, we are getting into the people analyzer, the accountability chart, and evaluating the executive team against their behaviors, their thinking, and their actions relative to the core values of the organization and GWC criteria. So the answer to that question is absolutely yes. And I'll take that one step further, Chris. You can use this to evaluate your existing executive team and staff and team members, as well as potential executive team members and staff. And so you should be using the People Analyzer tool as a means for interviewing and I want to use the word profiling, assessing whether someone is a good fit for your organization. You can ask questions about how did you demonstrate these core values in the previous work and experience that you do. So absolutely, I would highly recommend that you use the accountability chart and the People Analyzer to evaluate and align not only your staff and your team members, but your executive team and your management team as well. So it's a great question, Chris. Thank you. Okay, so now we know that we've got the right people, we've got our organization structured in the right way, and we still have this issue of John Smith and George Wilson. And John and George, John isn't demonstrating our core values to any degree, and George is doing those on a somewhat basis. And so clearly we have a performance issue with both John and George because they're below our bar. And again, you establish the bar, but in our case, here for discussion, they're below the bar. And so we use for this process, we use what we like to call a three-strike rule. And so if you have performance issues, people that aren't demonstrating your behaviors or actions, they don't get it, they want it, they have the capability, they're missing their accountabilities now that they've been clearly defined. Our recommendation is this. Strike one is simply discuss the issue and your expectation with that person and give them 30 days to correct the problem. So in this case, John, he just isn't measuring up to demonstrating our behaviors, and George just isn't demonstrating our core values as well. So discuss it, make it very clear to them. Here's our core values. You're not demonstrating, you're not thinking, behaving, and acting and making decisions aligned with our core values. We need to see the following improvement within the next 30 days. Strike two is, if you don't see improvement, discuss their performance again and give them another 30 days. And so now this is 2 opportunities and 60 days to change their behavior, their thinking, their actions, and their demonstration within your organization. If after 60 days you don't see any improvement, then we move that to strike 3. If you still don't see an improvement, they're simply not going to change and they must go. And again, I am not a big proponent of firing people or turning people, but if they simply aren't aligned with your culture, don't demonstrate those behaviors, they don't get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it, then they are simply not a good fit for that role within your organization. And so this is the 3-strike rule that we like to implement. And here's a couple of rules of thumb for you to determine whether you have the right people in these discussions. Here's test number 1. If it were a hiring decision, would you enthusiastically rehire this person? In other words, if you didn't know this person and they came aboard, would you rehire this person that you are having problems with? And secondly, if that person left, would you feel terribly disappointed or secretly relieved? Use those tools as a subjective evaluation whether you have the right people in the right seats. And so now we've got an objective criteria, a way of evaluating people against the People Analyzer. We know we've got the right seats because we have a clear accountability chart, and we've got the right people in the right seats. And let me identify some potential 5 types of people issues that you can still run into in your organization. The first is you can have the right person. In other words, this person absolutely demonstrates your core values, is aligned with your core values and demonstrates them, but they could be in the wrong seat. In other words, they don't GWC that seat. They don't get it, they don't want it, and they may not have the capability to execute that role. So in those cases, we recommend, if you can, find another seat within your organization that would be the right seat for this right person. Potentially you've got an open seat I'm not suggesting you always create a seat for a person, but if you went back and set up your accountability chart and you have a clear opening, a clear seat where that person is a good fit, you want to keep them because clearly they demonstrate your core behaviors, they're great people, they get along well, they demonstrate your core behaviors and your core values, so that person is a good fit for your organization. The second is you can have the wrong person, that's what we were talking about earlier with all three minuses, and they can be in the right seat. They may get it, they may want it, they may have the capacity to do it, but they simply don't demonstrate your core values. And I suggest to you that those people can bring your organization down very quickly if they are not demonstrating your core values, even though they have the capacity to do the work. The other situation you can have is multiple people in one seat. This can be very confusing, particularly at the executive team level. If you have multiple people in one seat, oftentimes we see that the visionary and the integrator are partners in a business, and both of them are heading up the business. This can be very confusing. And so we always recommend you have one person for one seat, not putting multiple people in one seat because it can be very disadvantageous and very confusing for your organization. The fourth is you could have one person, but you have that person in multiple seats. Now they're way outside of their bandwidth. They can't do anything well because you've got them spread so thin. So again, the rule is one person, one seat. Not one person, multiple seats, not multiple people in one seat, one person in multiple seats. And the fourth is no people, and you've got empty seats. And so these are the 5 potential people issues that you can have and address. And so as you move forward from our work today, think in terms of your organization. Do we have situations where we've got the right person in the wrong seat, the wrong person in the right seat, multiple people in one seat, one person in multiple seats, no people in empty seats? So this is just a criteria to help you to look out for potential problems and pitfalls in how you structure your organization and how you are utilizing and assigning your people within that organization. I don't see any more questions. Let me give you one last tool here. And so here's some kind of 4 basic questions to ask yourself as you think about your organization. The first is, to what degree is your accountability chart clear, complete, and constantly and consistently updated? Give yourself a rating 1 to 5. Do you have a clear accountability chart that lays out all the key roles within your organization and has the 3 to 5 to 7 accountabilities that that role is responsible for? Is it clear, is it complete, and is it updated? In other words, do you have the right seats identified and the right structure identified for your organization? Secondly, are your core values clear, and are you hiring, reviewing, rewarding, and firing around them? And that's why we built out the People Analyzer using your core values to identify, are you using those core values as a foundational element in hiring, reviewing, rewarding, and firing around them? If you're not, you need to, because that is what's building your organization and creating the culture within your organization. The third question is, are all of your people in the right, are they the right people? So are all of the people in your organization the right people? To what degree is that true? You should be in 5s in all of these. And if you're not, with your accountability chart or your core values are the right people, time to take some corrective action. And finally, do you have everyone in the right seat? So do we have a clear accountability chart? Are our value clears? Do we have the right people in the right seat? And so this is a way of just kind of determining where you're at and evaluating whether you've got the right people in the right seats doing the right thing within your organization. And this is a way that you're going to align everybody behind your vision and your core values. You're going to get everyone much more disciplined and accountable, just executing really well. You're going to build a healthy, cohesive, functional team by building a clear accountability chart, articulating and communicating your core values, getting the right people in the right seats. Let me pause and see if there are any further questions or comments or concerns at this time. Anyone have any further questions or concerns? We had a number of good questions. Thank you, Brian and Chris and Lisa. Are there any questions from the audience? Doesn't look like we have any questions from the audience. And so let me ask you, as you go through this and you look at these tools, the People Analyzer, the accountability chart, driving against your core values, evaluating against GWC, does this resonate with you? Could you see and envision your company operating this way? Is a picture of your leadership team embracing this way of identifying the right people in the right seats and hiring and firing and aligning your organization and your people to your organization's vision? Can you see this beginning to emerge? I said at the beginning that every great organization is built by a great system. And so the question that I am really posing to you is, as you think about this, do you want to go deeper and drill down into the people and the people analyzer deeper, or more importantly, do you want to take a look at a deeper look at the entrepreneurial operating system for your business? And so in the time we've had together, I've worked to provide some of the foundational elements of the entrepreneurial operating system, and more importantly, to show you how the people component can help you to get more from your business and more from your people and more from your time. And at this point, I have something important I'd like to share with you, and that is, as a result of sitting in on this webinar and participating in this webinar, I would like to offer you and your executive team a complimentary 90-minute executive alignment session. And this will cost you nothing except for 90 minutes of your leadership team time. And I will leave you and your leadership team with a set of very practical tools, very much like I did today, that you can apply immediately in your organization to get results. And my promise to you is that that will be a valuable, insightful session for you and your leadership team. And I would encourage you to take me up on this opportunity. And it's important for you to know that this is something I only do a few times. And I have availability between now and next Friday to do a complimentary executive alignment session with you and your executives team. So if you'd like to drill down deeper in the concepts and principles that we talked about today and explore this further for your organization and take a look at how the entrepreneurial operating system can help you get more from your business, more from your people, and more from your time, you can contact me directly. That is my direct email. That doesn't go to Megan. That doesn't go to anyone else in my organization. That comes directly to me. And that is my direct phone number you see on the screen. So if this is something you'd like to explore further, I would encourage you to take me up on this offer of an executive alignment session for your team. And the other thing I would recommend is do it now, because you know as soon as you step away from your computer, somebody's going to walk into your office and they're going to light your hair on fire. So shoot me an email now, call me right now at this phone number, and we'll get something set up. And I think it would be a great opportunity for you and your leadership team to get together, align your available resources in one unified direction, get your team much more accountable and disciplined and just executing really well, and building a healthy, cohesive, functional organization and a functional and healthy, cohesive team. So with that, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank you for your time and the interest that you've invested today. I hope you found the seminar of value to you. I know you care deeply for the success and long-term strength of your business, and I really appreciate that. And I just look forward to hearing from you and to the opportunity of doing an executive alignment session with you and your executive team. So thank you very much. This is Kevin McArdle, just wishing you all the best as you continue to work to grow your business.